So pivot, student loans. President Biden is considering a proposal to cancel a large amount of student loan debt. We don't know how much. He's just mulling at this point. Nothing's been announced. We know that most federal student loan payments have been suspended since March 2020. That was sort of a policy response to the COVID recession. And the current suspension in payments goes through to, I guess, August 31st. There are economists on left, right, and center who say canceling student debt is unnecessary, it's inflationary, it's regressive, it's unfair, and it's an inefficient use of taxpayer dollars. So I guess first question right out of the gate is there a policy rationale for canceling student debt?
There is a policy rationale for canceling the debt of people who were encouraged to take on debt by the federal government for degrees that do not increase their lifetime income. So, you get into you go to a for-profit college, and the federal government is subsidizing your debt burden there. And, the federal government, for whatever reason, the college closes, you don't graduate, you graduate with a degree that's worthless. I mean, there are sympathetic stories of people who have taken out debt without really fully knowing what they were doing or the long-term consequences of that. And I think there's a sympathetic case for some of these borrowers to have their debt forgiven. I think what the kind of progressives are pushing and what the Biden administration is looking at is much broader than this and has very little policy justification for, forgiving the debt of high income, of somebody that comes from a high income family who then goes into a high income career and is carrying a debt burden where they have to put, $300 to $400 a month of their income, of their $80,000 to $100,000 income towards their debt payments. That policy justification is very weak to me, and that suggests that there's a lot of politics at play here.
I wanted to talk about. I think it's possible for President Biden to design a forgiveness program that addresses several concerns. You can talk about means testing and what type of degree you were pursuing, et cetera. I think it's possible to sort of eliminate your MBAs, your PhDs, your lawyers and your doctors. But the one thing that I think is really hard to solve, one of the problems that's really hard to solve when it comes to student loan cancellation is the fairness issue, and that you've got a whole bunch of students in years past, families, they paid off their student loans or they saved money and were able to pay for their education. Plus you've got forward looking, you've got a whole bunch of, kids right now that might be in middle school or high school, and, college for them is still 5, maybe 10 years away, that aren't going to be advantaged by this debt cancellation process. So there's a fairness issue here that is really rings for a lot of people. And I was wondering, do you see any way to get around that fairness issue or address it in any way?
Well, look, I don't want to have people with pitchforks sending on my offices or the offices of the Concord Coalition, but of course I completely agree with you. I think that there's major fairness challenges with this policy, and I haven't heard the Biden administration really address this. I think that Biden himself had really strong instincts on this early on, where he was opposed to doing the debt cancellation and he basically ruled it out. But I think as the political tides have turned against them, they see this as an opportunity to rally part of their coalition, and their coalition and that's young people with high levels of student loan, people who took on a lot of debt, who live in near major cities to go to school. And I think that's what this is about, is the politics. And I just haven't heard Biden address the fairness of this. You have heard some Republicans bring this issue up, that this is basically forcing farmers and others to pay for the pottery degrees of high income families. And I think that's going to be an issue in the midterm election. But the question for the Biden administration is, do the benefits of rallying their base who like this policy outweigh the costs of probably rallying people who don't like them all that much anyway already against them?
Mm-hmm. And then there's the whole issue of, he wants to, if he does this, he's going to do this by executive order, which sort of gets you start to wonder, wait, isn't that what Congress is supposed to do? Isn't Congress supposed to pass laws as, the ones with the powers of the purse is Congress? Congress decides how we spend money. It seems a little head scratching that the administration thinks that they could do this by administrative order.
Right. And that also, there's no opportunities for reform in the executive order. You could do things that could potentially reduce the need for this down the road. You could do things that disincentivize the huge tuition increases that we've seen at universities over the last 30 years. If you did it through legislation, but an executive order that just cancels whatever the amount of debt is means that you're probably not going to get those reforms, which just incentivizes people to take out more loans and incentivizes universities and colleges to increase their tuitions ever higher. And that's a really bad cycle for the country.
Yeah, big moral hazard problem.